Episode 10 of The Summer I Turned Pretty Season 3 is not just another chapter in this love story. This is the part of the story that will shape how it all ends. Belly's journey in Paris felt like a breath of fresh air after the heartbreak she carried from home, but deep down, we knew her peace wouldn't last long. At first glance, she seemed to finally break free, surrounding herself with new friends, learning to live without looking back, and even daring to imagine a life where Conrad and Jeremiah no longer dictated her every choice. But episode 10 wastes no time in reminding us that running away does not erase the past. Even as Belly walks the bright Persian streets, the shadow of her old life lingers behind her. Every laugh she shares with her new friends, every attempt to start fresh, carries an unspoken weight. And when Conrad's letter arrives, or even just the thought of him reaching out, the walls Belly built around herself begin to crumble. Because no matter how hard she tries, Paris isn't an escape. It's only a pause, and episode 10 makes it clear Belly's story is not about forgetting, but about finally deciding who she is when faced with love, loyalty, and heartbreak colliding all at once. This is where the episode sets its trap for us as viewers. For a moment, we want to believe Belly can really leave everything behind. We want to imagine her laughing freely, creating new memories, and letting go of the messy love triangle, but deep down, we know this is not the show we've been watching. This story has always been about impossible choices, and episode 10 reminds us that even when she tries to run, Belly will eventually be pulled right back into the storm waiting for her. And what makes it even more gripping is the way her so-called freedom in Paris feels fragile. Every time she tries to smile, there's a trace of hesitation. Every moment she bonds with her friends, there's still that unshakable silence in her heart where Conrad and Jeremiah live. The writers don't let us forget it for even a second, and neither does Belly herself. Because Paris is beautiful, but it's also a mirror, and in that mirror, Belly cannot help but see her past staring right back at her. So when episode 10 opens, it doesn't just show us Belly trying to restart her life, it shows us the illusion she has built for herself, an illusion that's about to collapse. And the real suspense begins the moment she realizes the past she left behind isn't staying behind. It's already on its way to Paris. If there is one character in The Summer I Turned Pretty who has never learned how to let go, it is Jeremiah, and in episode 10, we finally see what happens when someone carries heartbreak for too long. At the start, he tries to convince himself that he has moved forward, that Belly's choice to leave for Paris was the end of their story, and that his pain will fade if he just keeps going. But as much as Jeremiah wants to appear strong, episode 10 shows us the truth. He is not only still in love with Belly, but he is also trapped in a silent battle with Conrad that has shaped his every move since childhood. The canceled wedding still lingers like a scar. No matter how much time has passed, Jeremiah cannot erase the humiliation and the heartbreak of watching Belly walk away, not only from him but also from the future he thought he had secured. And what makes it worse is that deep down, he knows Conrad was always part of the reason why. It is this constant comparison, this invisible competition between brothers, that keeps Jeremiah from truly moving on. In episode 10, the writers finally pull back the curtain and reveal that Jeremiah's love for Belly is not only about her, it is about winning against Conrad, about proving that for once he could be the one chosen. When Jeremiah finds out that Conrad has gone after Belly in Paris, his world shatters all over again. For him, it feels like history repeating itself. Like every wound he tried to heal being ripped open at once. And here is where episode 10 takes us into the rawest side of Jeremiah we have ever seen. The boy who always smiled, who always wanted to be the safe choice, finally lets the bitterness rise to the surface. He is angry, not just at Belly for leaving him, not just at Conrad for chasing her, but at the entire situation that has forced him to live in his brother's shadow for so long. We watch him spiral, and it is not pretty. Jeremiah's pain in this episode is heavy. Not the kind you can brush aside with a single conversation or a supportive friend. He lashes out. He isolates himself, and the way he carries himself makes it clear that he feels betrayed not only by Belly, but by Conrad as well. This isn't the playful, soft Jeremiah we've known. This is Jeremiah at his breaking point, and it is both heartbreaking and terrifying to see. And yet, in the middle of his anger, there is still that undeniable vulnerability. He wants to hate Belly for leaving, but he can't. He wants to turn his back on Conrad for good. But some part of him still longs for the bond they used to share as brothers. That is what makes his journey in episode 10 so tragic, because we can see he is torn between love and hate, forgiveness and resentment, longing and rage. And no matter what choice he makes, Jeremiah is guaranteed to lose something. What makes this section of the episode so powerful is that it finally forces Jeremiah to face the truth about himself. For so long, he believed he was the one who could fix everything, who could keep everyone together while Conrad pushed them away. But in episode 10, Jeremiah has to admit that he is not immune to jealousy, anger, or obsession. He is not just the soft-hearted brother. He is human, and humans break. This is where the suspense deepens. Because we know Jeremiah's breaking point is not just about him. His decisions now will shape the entire story. If he chooses to confront Conrad, the fragile bond between the brothers could shatter completely. If he chooses to chase Belly one last time, then all the progress she made in Paris could be undone in an instant. And if he chooses to walk away, then the heartbreak he leaves behind could ripple through everyone's lives. Episode 10 paints Jeremiah as a man standing at a crossroads. And no matter which way he turns, someone will get hurt. The only question is, will Jeremiah finally learn to step out of the shadow of his brother? Or will he let his obsession with Belly and his rivalry with Conrad destroy what little peace he has left? And as the episode reminds us, this is not just Jeremiah's story. His breaking point is the spark that will set fire to everything else. The moment he decides what to do about Conrad and Belly, the story we've been following from the very beginning will shift into its most dangerous territory yet. And that's what makes episode 10 so intense, because we are no longer watching a love triangle. We are watching the unraveling of two brothers and the girl who stands at the center of it all. If Jeremiah is falling apart in episode 10, then Conrad is the one carrying the quiet weight of everything they have lost. From the very first scene that shows his presence in this episode, we understand that he is not the kind of person who shouts his feelings or lets anger control him. Instead, Conrad suffers in silence, and that is exactly what makes his pain so powerful. For years, he has been labeled as cold, distant, even selfish. But episode 10 peels back all those assumptions and reveals a boy who has always cared too much, even when it broke him. The moment Conrad learns that Belly is in Paris, something shifts in him. For so long, he has convinced himself that walking away was the best thing to do, that distancing himself from Jeremiah and letting Belly make her own choices was the only way to protect everyone. But episode 10 shows us the truth. Conrad has never stopped loving Belly. Every sacrifice he made, every time he chose silence over confession, was not because he did not care, but because he cared too much. And when Jeremiah gives away the secret of where Belly is, Conrad faces a choice he has avoided for too long. Will he let love slip away again? Or will he finally fight for what his heart has been screaming all along? What makes Conrad's storyline in episode 10 so thrilling is the quiet determination he carries. Unlike Jeremiah, who bursts with emotion, Conrad's love runs like an undercurrent, subtle but unstoppable. We see it in the way he hesitates before taking action, as though weighing the cost of every move. We see it in the way he writes to Belly, pouring out words he never dared to say aloud. And we see it in the way he ultimately chooses to follow his heart, no matter how messy it becomes. But this is not just about love, it's about the silent war Conrad has been fighting within himself for years. Episode 10 dives deep into his guilt, his regrets, and the way he has always carried responsibility for everyone else's happiness. After his mother's death, Conrad stepped into a role no one asked of him, trying to hold his family together, trying to protect Jeremiah, and trying to shield Belly from the chaos that lived inside him. Yet, all this time, he has never allowed himself the one thing he truly wanted: to be loved without fear, without conditions, without guilt. This is why his decision to go after Belly in Paris feels so monumental. It's not just a romantic gesture, it's Conrad finally giving himself permission to want something for himself. For once, he isn't thinking about Jeremiah's feelings first, or about how his choices might break someone else. For once, he is choosing love, even if it means facing the storm that comes with it, and that storm is coming. Because we know Jeremiah is not the kind of person to sit quietly while Conrad wins the girl. The suspense in episode 10 builds as we watch Conrad wrestle with this inner war. Every step he takes toward Belly feels heavy, as though he is carrying the weight of his entire past on his shoulders. He remembers the nights when he pushed her away, the words he should have spoken but didn't, the moments he let slip by because he thought silence was safer. And now, as he reaches out to her, he knows this may be his last chance. The thought of losing her again is unbearable, and it is that desperation, that quiet but unshakable determination that drives him forward. And yet, the beauty of Conrad's arc in episode 10 is that it is not loud or dramatic. It is subtle, understated, and deeply human. His emotions are not painted in shouting matches or grand gestures, but in the quiet courage of someone who has finally decided he cannot keep living half a life. He has lost too much already: his mother, his closeness with Jeremiah, his peace of mind, and he refuses to lose Belly without fighting. The silent war inside Conrad becomes the foundation of this entire episode, because it is the contrast to Jeremiah's chaos While Jeremiah is loud, emotional, and consumed by jealousy, Conrad is steady, deliberate, and willing to endure the pain if it means being true to himself at last. This balance is what makes the love triangle so gripping in episode 10. We are not just watching two brothers chase the same girl. We are watching two completely different expressions of love clash against each other. And only one can survive the storm. By the end of this section, one thing becomes clear: Conrad's journey in episode 10 is no longer about avoiding pain or keeping the peace. It is about stepping into the fire and embracing the consequences, because for Conrad, love has never been about winning or losing, it has always been about Belly. And in this episode, for the first time, we see him prepared to do whatever it takes to keep her, even if it means facing the brother he has spent his whole life trying not to hurt. And that's what makes Conrad so dangerous in this moment, not dangerous in a cruel way, but in the way that someone becomes unstoppable when they finally accept what they want. Episode 10 sets Conrad on a path that is both heartbreaking and inspiring. And by the time he makes his move, we know the story will never be the same again. For episodes and episodes, we have been building to this moment, the reunion of Belly and Conrad in Paris. And episode 10 finally gives us what fans have been craving since the airport scene left us hanging. A true chance for them to face each other without interruptions, without runaway flights, and without the wedding disaster hanging over their heads. But just because they are in the same city doesn't mean this reunion is simple. In fact, episode 10 proves that seeing each other again is only the beginning of a storm neither of them can control. When Belly first lays eyes on Conrad again, it feels like time freezes. For a girl who has spent weeks trying to convince herself she could move forward, his presence is the crack in the glass. All the walls she built in Paris, all the laughter she shared with her new friends, all the promises she whispered to herself about starting over, they crumble the second he steps back into her life, because no matter how much she wanted to escape him, the truth is that Conrad has always been her gravity. And episode 10 makes it painfully clear she cannot outrun him forever. What makes their reunion so emotional is not just the joy of seeing each other, it's the flood of everything unsaid. Belly has questions, she has anger, confusion, longing, and heartbreak all tangled together. She wants to demand why he always runs hot and cold, why he lets her go only to come back when she finally tries to move on. But she also wants to admit the one thing she has never been able to deny, that even when Conrad breaks her heart, he is still the person it beats for. Episode 10 captures this tension perfectly, showing us two people who are desperate for each other but terrified of repeating the same mistakes. And then there's Conrad, whose entire presence in Paris is proof of just how much he has changed. This is not the boy who stood in the shadows, too afraid to speak. This is not the man who pushed her away because of fear or guilt or duty to Jeremiah. This is someone who has finally chosen to fight for love, even if it costs him everything. And the way he looks at Belly in this episode, like she is both the wound and the cure, tells us everything we need to know about why he came all this way. He is no longer silent. He is no longer hiding. For the first time, Conrad is willing to risk being selfish because he knows Belly is the only thing that has ever truly mattered to him. Episode 10 gives us glimpses of what could be if they allowed themselves to stop fighting and simply love each other. Walking together through Paris, sharing quiet smiles, letting the world fade away, it feels almost too perfect. Like a dream they both know might be temporary. And that's exactly what makes these moments so bittersweet, because just as they begin to find each other again, the shadow of Jeremiah looms larger than ever. Even in their laughter, there is guilt. Even in their closeness, there is fear. Belly knows Jeremiah has never stopped hurting, and Conrad knows that every step he takes toward Belly is another step away from his brother. This guilt is the poison that hangs in the air, threatening to ruin the fragile happiness they are beginning to rediscover. The writers build this tension masterfully, giving us just enough sweetness to remind us why these two have always been at the heart of the story, while also reminding us that the storm hasn't hit yet. And then, just as Conrad and Belly begin to lower their guards, Jeremiah enters the picture. His arrival in Paris is not loud or dramatic at first. It is quiet, simmering, and filled with the weight of everything we explored in his breaking point earlier in the episode. He doesn't need to shout or fight right away. His very presence is enough to shatter the fragile peace Belly and Conrad tried to build. The look on his face, the sharpness in his voice, the way he carries himself, it is all a reminder that the love triangle is not over. In fact, it is about to become more dangerous than ever. This is where the reunion transforms from a moment of hope into a battlefield. Belly, caught between the boy she cannot let go of and the boy she cannot stop hurting, finds herself drowning in guilt once again. And for Conrad and Jeremiah, the tension between them finally begins to bubble over. Every unspoken word, every Buried resentment, every painful memory starts to surface in this reunion. Episode 10 doesn't just give us the return of Conrad and Belly, it sets the stage for the collision of all three hearts. In a way that feels unavoidable and explosive, the beauty of this section is how it reminds us that love in the summer I turned pretty has never been simple. It is messy, it is painful, and it forces everyone involved to confront the parts of themselves they would rather ignore. Belly wants love without guilt, but she cannot have it. Conrad wants love without loss, but he cannot have it. Jeremiah wants love without competition, but he cannot have it. And in episode 10, all three of them are forced to face the truth. Love does not come without sacrifice. And someone will always end up broken. By the end of this reunion, one thing is clear. Whatever decision Belly makes now will not just decide her own future. It will decide the fate of two brothers, the bond between them, and the legacy of everything they have all been through together. Episode 10 doesn't let us breathe easy. It drags us deeper into the storm, reminding us that the closer Belly and Conrad get, the more inevitable Jeremiah's explosion becomes. And when it finally happens, none of them will walk away unchanged. If the reunion between Belly and Conrad felt like the calm before the storm, then Jeremiah's confrontation is the lightning strike that splits the sky open. From the very first moment he steps into their orbit in Paris, the air changes. The fragile happiness Belly and Conrad were beginning to find collapses in an instant, replaced by tension so sharp it feels like the whole episode is holding its breath. This is the moment we've all known was coming. But episode 10 makes it clear it is not just about love anymore, it is about betrayal, pride, and the cracks in a brotherhood that may never be repaired. Jeremiah has always been the one who wears his heart on his sleeve, but in this confrontation, his emotions come out with a rawness we have never seen before. He doesn't just accuse Conrad of stealing the girl he loves, he accuses him of stealing every chance Jeremiah ever had at happiness. The words cut deep because they are not entirely about Belly. They are about years of standing in his brother's shadow, years of watching Conrad be chosen first, years of trying to be the safe option only to learn that safe was never enough. The argument burns hot. Jeremiah throws every wound onto the table: the wedding, the countless times Conrad pulled away only to return, the way Belly always seems to fall back into Conrad's arms, no matter how much pain it causes, and Belly, standing in the middle, feels the crushing weight of guilt pressing down on her from both sides. She wants to defend herself, to remind Jeremiah that she never asked him to compete for her love. But the look in his eyes makes it clear this is not just about her choices. This is about years of silent rivalry finally boiling over into words too sharp to take back. Conrad, on the other hand, stays true to his nature. He does not scream. He does not lash out the way Jeremiah does, but the quietness of his voice, the steadiness of his tone, makes the confrontation even more powerful because while Jeremiah hurls accusations, Conrad refuses to deny the truth. Yes, he loves Belly. Yes, he came to Paris for her, and yes, he will fight for her, even if it destroys the fragile bond between them as brothers. It is this honesty, this refusal to apologize for his feelings, that makes Jeremiah's rage burn even hotter. The tension rises with every word until it feels like a breaking point is inevitable. We see the brothers standing face to face, not as family, but as rivals, the weight of their grief, losing their mother, losing each other, losing the innocence of their childhood, hangs between them. Belly, caught in the middle, realizes that no matter what she says, no matter what she does, she cannot fix this fracture because this was never just her story, it was always theirs too. Episode 10 crafts this confrontation with a precision that leaves us breathless. Every word Jeremiah spits is laced with years of pain, and every quiet response Conrad gives is heavy with unspoken guilt. Belly is forced to stand in the crossfire, watching the two people she cares for most tear each other apart because of her, and what makes it so tragic is that there is no clean resolution, no easy path forward. The damage is already done. The suspense of this scene does not just come from the anger, it comes from the choices each character makes in the aftermath. Jeremiah, for all his fury, is forced to realize that Belly will never look at him the way she looks at Conrad. It is a truth that breaks him more than he will ever admit, and Conrad, for all his quiet determination, knows that winning Belly's heart might cost him his brother forever. Belly, meanwhile, feels the crushing truth that no matter which way she turns, she will be responsible for someone's heartbreak, and this is where the episode twists the knife. Because instead of giving us closure, episode 10 leaves us with open wounds. Jeremiah storms out, his anger unresolved, his pain raw and visible. Conrad is left standing in silence, staring after his brother with a mixture of regret and determination, and Belly, trembling from the weight of it all, realizes that the storm is far from over. This was not the final confrontation, it was only the beginning. What makes this section of episode 10 so unforgettable is that it finally forces the love triangle into its sharpest, most dangerous form. There is no longer space for half measures. No longer space for pretending that all three of them can walk away intact. This is the moment when the truth is laid bare. And the truth is brutal. Someone must lose. Jeremiah cannot keep clinging to hope. Conrad cannot keep sacrificing himself for peace. And Belly cannot keep trying to keep both brothers whole when her love will always split them apart. By the end of this confrontation, the suspense is unbearable. We know Jeremiah will not simply fade quietly out of the picture. His love and his pride will not allow it. We know Conrad will not back down this time. His heart is set on Belly, and he is done hiding it. And we know Belly will have to make a choice soon, not just for herself, but for the brothers whose futures are tied to hers. Episode 10 does not give us the resolution, but it does something far more powerful. It locks us in for the endgame, where the consequences of every choice will finally come crashing down. By the time episode 10 begins to close, one thing is clear: this is no longer just a story about summer love. It has become a story about choices, about family, about the weight of the past, and about the kind of future each character is willing to fight for. The confrontation between Jeremiah and Conrad leaves everyone raw, shaken, and broken in ways that cannot simply be patched up with apologies. And as the dust settles, the true suspense of episode 10 begins to take shape, not in the shouting, not in the heartbreak, but in the quiet realization that the next decision Belly makes will define everything. For Belly, the fallout is crushing. She came to Paris to escape, to heal, to start fresh, and for a short time she thought she could. But now she sees that her past will always follow her because she has never truly let go of it. Seeing Conrad again reminded her of the love she has never been able to bury. But watching Jeremiah fall apart reminded her of the guilt she carries for breaking his heart again. And again, Belly stands at the center of this storm with no safe way out. And the tragedy of episode 10 is that, even as she longs to choose love, she fears that her choice might destroy everything else. The suspense of this episode lies in the way it sets up the inevitable. We know there are only 2 episodes left, and the writers make sure we feel the weight of that countdown. Belly cannot keep delaying. She cannot keep pretending she can have peace while Conrad and Jeremiah circle each other like enemies instead of brothers. At some point soon she will have to decide. And in episode 10, we see the first glimpses of what that decision might look like. Her moments with Conrad are full of tenderness, a reminder that their connection is something deeper than fleeting attraction. When they talk, it is not just about love, it is about understanding, about the years they have known each other, about the way they see through each other in ways no one else can. This bond is undeniable, and it draws Belly closer to him even when she tries to resist. But every smile they share comes with a shadow, because she knows Jeremiah's pain is not just anger, it is heartbreak. And she cannot forget the boy who once stood beside her, believing he was chosen, only to watch it all slip away. For Jeremiah, episode 10 leaves him in a dangerous place. His storming out is not an ending, it is the beginning of a spiral. We see him wander through Paris with bitterness in his chest, refusing to let go, refusing to admit defeat. And what makes his arc so suspenseful is that he is not just fighting for Belly anymore. He is fighting for his pride, his identity, and his sense of self-worth. To lose Belly to Conrad again is not just romantic rejection, it is proof of every fear he has ever carried, every insecurity he has ever hidden. Jeremiah is at the edge of breaking. And that edge is what makes him unpredictable going into the final 2 episodes. And then there is Conrad. Unlike Jeremiah, his path is clear now. Episode 10 strips away all the hesitation, all the fear, all the guilt that kept him silent for so long. Conrad knows what he wants, and he is no longer willing to walk away from it. His love for Belly is no longer something he hides or sacrifices, it is something he is willing to fight for, even if it means losing his brother. The quiet determination in his character makes it clear in the endgame. Conrad is not going to step aside. He has chosen his heart, and he will not let go. This is where episode 10 becomes more than just a love triangle, it becomes the foundation for the series' final act. Because now, the choices each character makes are not just about romance, they are about family, about betrayal, about healing, and about the painful truth that sometimes love cannot exist without loss. The bonds between Belly, Conrad, and Jeremiah have been stretched to their breaking point, and episode 10 is the moment we see them finally begin to snap. The suspense builds in the smallest details. The silence after Jeremiah storms out, the way Conrad looks at Belly, as if asking her to choose him without speaking a word, the way Belly stands frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, because she knows no matter what she says, someone will walk away broken. Episode 10 does not give us answers, but it makes the questions impossible to ignore. Who will Belly choose, and what will that choice cost her as the credits draw near? The feeling is unmistakable. We are no longer watching three people stumble through love, we are watching them race toward an ending none of them are ready for. Jeremiah's heartbreak is unresolved, Conrad's determination is unshakable. Belly's guilt is unbearable. And all of it is leading to a final choice that will define not just who ends up with whom, but who these characters truly are. Episode 10 ends not with closure but with a promise. A promise that the next two episodes will not let us look away. That the love triangle we have followed from the very beginning is about to reach its most painful, most thrilling, and most unforgettable conclusion. Belly cannot run anymore, Jeremiah cannot wait anymore, and Conrad cannot hold back anymore. The storm has arrived, and by the time it passes, nothing will be the same again. So as we step into the end game, one truth is certain: this is not a story where everyone gets a happy ending. This is a story where choices have consequences, where love comes with sacrifice, and where the people we have grown with for 3 seasons must finally face the reality of who they are and what they truly want. Episode 10 makes that truth impossible to ignore, and it leaves us breathless for what comes next. Because the summer may have started with innocence, but it will end with decisions that will echo far beyond Cousins Beach, far beyond Paris, and far beyond the simple idea of who Belly ends up with. Episode 10 is the turning point. And from here, there is no going back.